The highest form of murder is to kill yourself first. Only the murderer becomes the victim. It's the only way to get rid of the suspicion completely, so that the case will remain unsolved forever. It's a masterpiece by Agatha, the queen of deductive reasoning. Point 3, no one left alive. It's taken the top spot on all the speculative fiction lists, from its publication in 1939 to the present. A total of 1 book has been sold worldwide. The originator of the nursery rhyme and the silo kill mode. Although the title of the movie is a serious spoiler, but even if you already know who the killer is, and it doesn't detract from the fun of reasoning at all. Instead, it'll make you even more curious about the killer's modus operandi. I'm going to take you back to this classic masterpiece. You'll see. How good is the Queen of Inference's suspenseful approach? It takes place on an isolated island. Mr. and Mrs. Owen, the owners of the castle, by writing letters, invited 8 guests to the island. They are Bella, the governess, a Judge Wargrave, General MacArthur, 1880 to 1964, U.S. Commander-in-Chief, Lombard, the mercenary, Sheriff Williams, Sister Emily, Dr. Edward, and Richie Marston. These 8 guests don't know each other, but they've all been involved in murders and escaped justice. They are based on the location on the invitation. They're coming down to the dock, or the boatman will transport them to the island. The crowd at the moment doesn't realize. What awaits them is endless darkness. When the people arrived on the island, or the housekeeper and his wife have been waiting for you, watching people walk toward the castle. The boatman wore an intriguing expression. And when you arrive at the castle, the butler assigns the guests to their rooms in turn. Be available until dinner time. Mr. and Mrs. Irving, who invited them, still haven't shown up. Just as the crowd was talking, there was a radio broadcast from the castle. He's accusing everyone of murder. When they heard the charges, the crowd panicked, rushing to find the source of the sound. Finally, in one of the rooms, found a record player. Obviously, this was pre-recorded audio. The crowd began to question the butler. The housekeeper said he and his wife came to work yesterday. He's just doing what Mr. and Mrs. Owen asked him to do. Play this recording during dinner. As for the content of the recording, he had no knowledge of it. When the crowd has calmed down, have begun to brush off the allegations in the recordings. There are those who believe that these crimes are false accusations. There are others who feel that the victim died in an accident that he had nothing to do with. Some even said they didn't know the victim. Only the mercenary and the rich kid pleaded guilty to the charges. Lombard said, I did slaughter 21 of the tribe's men, but a soldier's duty is to carry out orders. He doesn't feel guilty. It's just a different position. And then the rich kid confessed, I killed 2 kids with a DUI. He doesn't realize his faults. Instead, they blame the child's parents. In the face of all the accusations, the rich kid says he's already lost the money. It won't stop him from getting back in the car. Maybe even God can't stand it. I saw him take a sip of red wine. Dump. With the horrified eyes of the crowd. Richie started spitting blood. Then he died on the spot. This sudden scene, the frightened crowd panicked. But it's getting late. We'll have to wait until morning to leave the island. What I didn't realize was that the next morning, the butler's wife died in her sleep without warning. Learning of a woman's death, Teacher Bella found the original tin soldier figures on the dining room table. There are only 8 left, and in everyone's room. They all have a nursery rhyme, where the first 2 sentences read, a 9-biddle, a kiosk, out and about. Nenny Hinelk, 10 little dirt sellers out of the gate for a toothpick. A 9 Leanla, ring sailor, go out and hit the dental system. Boy soldier little S9. Boy and E little. Soldier, unfortunately, has a throat full of power. Boy soldier sat up VCN, a small group of 7 soldiers with unique skills. Steyr boys sat up early in the morning and didn't answer. 8 out of 9. Boys Ladiker sat up and didn't answer. See you. A Deer boys sat up unintelligo. A lower ICR boys SAT up clear answers. Combined with the scene of the 2 deaths. I can't believe it's the same as the nursery rhyme. Could it be that someone is killing people according to a nursery rhyme? Breakfast time. Bella asked if anyone had touched the soldier dolls. And point the finger at the doctor. Because the doctor had given the housekeeper's wife a sedative. When he heard Bella's questioning, the doctor was instantly furious. When he heard Bella's questioning, the doctor was instantly furious. When he heard Bella's questioning, the doctor was instantly furious. Request for inspection of medicines carried by doctors. I can turn over my suitcase. No drugs have been found to cause death. Looks like the doctor wasn't the killer. Could there be someone else on Soldier Island? The mercenary took the sheriff on a search of the entire island. But besides them, there's no one else at all. Afterwards, we all packed up and tried to leave the island. But the boatman didn't come to pick them up. Emily suddenly realized. The general has died a horrible death on the reef. Look at the bloody bodies. The crowd is in a complete panic. If the previous 2 deaths were an accident, or that general will never do, because he died from blunt force trauma. Bella hurried to the table, or one of the soldier figures is missing. 8 little soldiers traveling to Devon. Linger and never leave 8 only 7, or one murder after another. Bella is falling apart. She rushed to the sea without thinking, trying to get off this island. It's a good thing the judge got here in time, or that's how we got Bella to shore. Or then a few people got together and started analyzing Mr. and Mrs. Owen's reason for inviting them to the island, trying to find some common ground. Lombard said that the Irvings were working through a client. Invited him to the island to take care of some complicated business and a cash payment in advance. He asked for what exactly we're dealing with. The client didn't tell him. Bella said she was also commissioned through Mr. and Mrs. Owens. Said she'd be tutoring kids on the island. The judge, on the other hand, received a letter directly from Irving. Get him on the island to meet a mutual friend. Sister was invited by Mrs. Owen. Learned that she adopted many abandoned babies. That's why I want to do my part for the nuns. And the sheriff is getting letters from Owen. Invited him to the island on a difficult case. And there's the doctor who also received a letter from Irving. Get him on the island to treat Mrs. Owen. And the housekeeper and his wife were hired 2 days ago. Everyone thinks that inviting them to the island is just a front. Inviting them to the island was a front. Everyone thought it was a front. Inviting them to the island was a front. Everyone thought it was a front. Maybe Mr. and Mrs. Irving don't even exist. But the killer must be hiding among them. The crowd began to suspect the butler. After all, when they came to the island, there was only the housekeeper and his wife. But I didn't realize it would happen again. The doctor woke everyone up in a panic, only to see that the butler has been killed by an axe. 7 little soldiers lifting axes and chopping wood for the fire. I cut off the heads of 7, but only 6 are left. Looks like it wasn't the butler. With the waves outside getting bigger and bigger, the whole island is in an eerie mood. An inexplicable feeling of dread gradually came over me. Doctors come forward to align themselves with judges. Because in this group, the judge is seriously ill. There's no way it's the killer. Since the housekeeper and his wife are dead, Bella started taking care of everyone else's dinner. But when she came to the restaurant, only to find that there are only 5 soldier figures left, she hurriedly struck the gong downstairs, where the crowd was looking for something. Found the nun dead on the couch. 6 little soldiers stirred up a hornet's nest, or there's no place to hide from the bees. 5 out of 6. After the crowd had settled the body, the mercenary returned to the room, only to find his pistol gone. He hastened to tell everyone about it, since the door was locked. So people are guessing, or the killer must have a master key. Meanwhile, the crowd was in an argument, or they both think the other is the killer. But when they've calmed down, start looking for the missing pistol room by room. I've looked in every corner of the room. Still no sign of the pistol. No one noticed. The pistol and the master key are hidden in the taxidermied bear's mouth. Soon the night will fall again. The crowd suddenly realized, or the judge has disappeared. When they came to the judge's chambers, he was found with a pistol to his head. 5 little soldiers going to lawyer together. The imperial court has sentenced 5 to death, with only 4 left. But they didn't hear any gunshots. How exactly did the killer accomplish the hunt? The people decided not to sit around and wait for it to happen, instead of waiting to die. Or why don't we just party all night and enjoy the moment? Or that night, the 4 of them let themselves go. After 3 rounds of drinks, the doctor made a sudden discovery. There's some warmth in the atmosphere between Lombard and Bella. And sure enough, after the orgy was over, the 2 of them went into the same room. Bella is afraid she'll be killed, so she approached in the hope that Lombard would protect her. In the middle of the night, the sheriff suddenly realized. The doctor left the castle quietly. He rushed to wake Lombard, but they searched all night. There's no sign of the doctor. When Lombard returned to his room, I found the missing pistol in my bed. and the soldier figures at the table. At this point, there are only 3 left. Apparently, the doctor was killed. 4 little soldiers, going to the beach together. The mackerel swallowed the belly, and there were only 3 of the 4 left. I've seen people I once suspected killed one by one. A few people were in complete despair. They decided to go to the edge of the cliff and light a fire for help. The sheriff suddenly heard a strange noise coming from the room. When they realized the sheriff wasn't following them. It was a bad feeling. Lombard rushed back to check. As expected, the sheriff is dead in the hallway. 3 little soldiers, playing in the zoo. A bear slap. 3 down, 2 to go. The 2 dare not remain in the castle. But just as they climbed up the cliff to light the fire. But just as he climbed up the hill. But I've got a doctor's note. By now Bella was on guard. Because when Lombard went to check on the sheriff just now, one does not follow. He probably used that time to kill the sheriff. Bella snatches Lombard's hand in a snatch. She didn't give the other woman a chance to explain. Pulled the trigger. 2 little dirt soldiers, under the sun. 2 little soldiers, perched in the sun. The poison day takes 2 lives. The poisonous day has taken 2 lives and left only 1. Bella's the only one left alive. But the story is far from over. Bella returned to the castle in a state of dismay. The room has been rigged for hanging. She slowly stepped onto the chair. Stick your head in the ropes. Maybe as a relief for her. But then the doorknob suddenly moved. As the door to the room slowly opens, an all too familiar face appeared. This man is a long-dead judge. Bella was startled and kicked over a chair. The judge had no intention of saving her. Instead, I'm going to tell you all about my plan. He bought the island in the name of Mr. and Mrs. Irving. The purpose of inviting them to the island. It's all about taking care of those who have escaped the law. A rich kid was once convicted of drunk driving. Ran over 2 kids, but he used the money to avoid the law. Mr. and Mrs. Butler had been for the property, covered his former owner with a pillow. The general had shot his own men because he found out his men were having an affair with his wife. Sisters once kicked an unmarried, pregnant maid out of the house. The other guy ended up lying down on the tracks, including the judge himself. He's been convicted of insufficient evidence, sentencing a prisoner to death, and watched the other guy get hanged. Next is the doctor. He's operated on patients while drunk. The patient died a horrible death in his hospital bed, and the sheriff abused the lynch mob, killed an innocent young man in prison. And then the mercenaries, who once on a mission, he killed 2 of the tribe's men. The queen is Bella. She used to tutor her employer's children, but she fell in love with the kid's uncle. Since the boy's father has passed away, R.A. wanted to live like a rich man. I intend for the uncle to inherit the boy's father's estate, thus taking advantage of. So I took advantage of an outing. She deliberately tricked the boy into swimming in the sea, and then delayed the rescue. It eventually led to the boy's drowning. Mrs. Unknowing employer. She even thanked her for saving her son's life. But Uncle had already seen through Bella's scheme. But since there is no evidence, Bella escaped the law. And now, everyone's crimes will be judged by a judge. Because he's terminally ill. He's going to preach to these sinners before he dies. About faking your own death. Only he and the doctor know. Because they've been in an alliance for a long time. It was the doctor who personally examined the wound and treated the body of the household. He couldn't have guessed that the judge was the killer. In the face of Bella's pleas for mercy, the judge came right up and removed the chair and left the room. A little soldier, all alone. A little soldier, all alone. A little soldier, all alone. I'll hang myself from the beam, and there'll be no one left in this life. Or the judge came into the hall with a gun. He disguised your seat as if there's another person present, and then chose to shoot himself. The pistol was thrown across the room with inertia, and that's the whole episode with no survivors. Just think about it. When the police came to the island, I only saw Tim, but there's no trace of the killer. This case is bound to remain unsolved forever.